So, a little while ago, we were in the office having a bit of a discussion about film trilogies, specifically which film trilogies we thought were the best. And of course, we went through the typical suspects: Lord of the Rings, Back to the Future, bar number three. But eventually, we got around to talking about the Cornetto trilogy, which of course is one of the best British comedy trilogies pretty much ever made. And of course, once we got onto that topic, we eventually started discussing which movie within that trilogy was our favourite. Now, of course, the room was pretty much split between Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but I was just in the corner and I had to raise my hand and say that I prefer The World's End. Now, at this point, I might as well have hit the fire alarm and started flipping people's desks over because the reaction I got would have been no different. People were gobsmacked that I preferred The World's End to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and just couldn't seem to accept that I might think that this film is superior. And so I wanted to revisit that opinion now and at least explain why I believe The World's End is the best film in the Cornetto trilogy. But as always, I just want to start off by saying thank you for coming to my channel. As you can see, we've got a little bit of a different setup this time around, which hopefully makes videos look a lot better in the future. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so now, as it'll make my day if you do. So anyway, let's dive right in. I want to make clear from the outset here that I love every movie within the Cornetto trilogy. Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz are some of my favourite British comedies of all time. I just happen to like The World's End a bit better. So let's get down to the why. And for me, it starts with the characters. Now, don't get me wrong, Shaun and Nicholas Angel are fun to watch, sure, but they're just not very nuanced characters compared to Gary King. This is a man who has never been able to get over the fact that the promise of the future beyond secondary school never lived up to its full potential, and in fact the best years of his life were in fact within secondary school. And so not only is he clinging on to the past, but he's also abusing drugs and alcohol to keep his mind away from the present. There's also a lot to be said for Andy Knightley, played by Nick Frost. In both Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, Nick Frost tends to play the sort of bumbling buffoon, but this time around he's given a far more mature role to step into. After all, up until the point where he gets drunk himself, Andy Knightley seems to be the voice of common sense within the group, and he's the one who constantly calls out Gary King for his lewd behaviour. As the narrative goes on, however, we do find out that Andy is hiding some secrets of his own, but of course I don't want to spoil that too much. Let's just say it adds a lot more depth to his character than what you initially expect going in. But moving away from the characters for a moment, I want to talk about none other than Edgar Wright. The British director's unique style of speedy jump cuts and background jokes only seem to get better and more refined the further along you go within the trilogy. And so by the time you get to The World's End, not only has Edgar Wright cut his teeth on Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, but he's also directed a little-known cult film called Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And it's clear to see that Edgar Wright learned a great deal from Scott Pilgrim, and he employs the same skills and tactics in The World's End. But the key part of The World's End that makes it win above all of the other movies in my mind is the comedy. There's barely a moment in this movie where it isn't trying to make you laugh with something immediate happening on screen or something in the background. It's just wall-to-wall comedy, and it means that you pick up something new every single time you watched it. And it's still happening to me now, even though I've watched the movie dozens of times. In fact, it wasn't until a couple of viewings in that someone pointed out to me that the names of the pubs correlate directly to the events that happen within them. It's Edgar Wright's style at its best, and I think it's just perfectly refined in The World's End. But what do you think? Does anyone out there agree with me that The World's End is the best movie of the Cornetto trilogy? Or are you more of a Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz fan? Whatever your opinions are, please let me know in the comments below.